What's going on, everybody? Jolt here from TheTokenMinorities, and I am here with Week 4 of the Pokemon Premier League Division 1, this week against Polymac and his West Coast Wingulls. Now, before we go any further, make sure to check out the description below, as you will see a link to my opponent's channel, as well as several other PPL-related links. Give them a look, and there's a lot of cool stuff down there that I think you will enjoy. Now, if you happen to miss last week's battle, we did unfortunately pick up our first loss of the season against the Don Fanatic and his Norwich Skitty. The matchup was very hard, very hard, but unfortunately we were not able to pull out the W despite the fact that we brought Semi-Stall in that game, and that went interestingly. Not really something I ever want to repeat again, because Semi-Stall is just not really viable, honestly, on Wi-Fi. It's okay on Showdown, sure. I'm not going to say it's a non-viable strategy on Showdown, but on Wi-Fi, there's simply not enough time to be able to pull off a strategy like that. And just upon looking over the replay a little bit further since that battle, I honestly think I could have won that game if it was on Showdown, because different plays would have been made if more time was allowed to make said plays and to prolong the game, so that things like my Audino could actually have won that game. So unfortunately, maybe it would have played out a little bit differently in a Showdown league, but this is a Wi-Fi league, and unfortunately we were not able to pick up the win last week. That just makes this week all the more important, as we definitely want to win this game. We don't want to start the season 2-2. We want to be 3-1 if we want to win the championship in this pretty tough league, and it starts now if we're going to continue that journey. So before I go any further as well on the team analysis, shout out to my front office for the help once again with the team building and mock battles. You guys are awesome. Couldn't do it without you. Now let's go ahead and jump on into the team overview. So my opponent, Polymac, has Thunderous T with a Z eligibility, Mega Scizor, Toxapex, Donphan, Mienshao, Gourgeist, Garchomp with a Z eligibility, also allowed to use things like Z Sandstorm. It's his support Z user as well, and Mesprit with the Z move, and Liepard. So definitely a pretty interesting momentum-based team he has here, and my team essentially the same as that's been, with the exception that we did make a transaction this week with my Audino leaving the team for my Sliggoo. So Sliggoo joins the roster this week to help me deal with a variety of threats and a variety of offensive type combinations that my team was not able to defensively handle very well. So I felt that a bulky dragon really would be useful for that for sure. Now, some of the bigger threats on my opponent's team here, there's really only a couple that I would consider to be big threats. I'll say 3 that can be considered big threats on his team. My matchup overall is pretty good, both offensively and defensively, so that definitely makes building pretty, a little bit less stressful than last week, whenever I felt like I couldn't prep for any of his mons without bringing Semi-Stall. That was really unfortunate, but this week, not the case. We're definitely going to be able to bring a more balanced build, which is definitely good news for you guys and for me, because that game was not fun to play last week at all. So biggest threats on his team. Biggest one for sure is the Thunderous T, as looking down my roster, Thunderous T is definitely capable of bringing coverage moves to do a ton of damage to any member of my team. The good news is it is kind of restricted to a 4 move slot syndrome, essentially, in that if he wants to bring a setup move to become a huge threat, he's only able to bring 3 moves. Those moves are definitely going to include an electric move for the Slowbro. I think it's going to include Hidden Power Ice to help him hit my Diggersby and my Decidueye, and then the last move is either going to be Sludge Wave or Focus Blast. That's my guess. He might not bring Focus Blast just because that's only really good for the Diggersby and the Registeel, making Sludge Wave a pretty likely option, but he is very much so restricted to only having 3 moves in this matchup if he wants to have any setup opportunity. And just looking at how the matchup looks, I really do think he's going to lean on the Thunderous T and the Garchomp for his setup, as nothing else on his team really strikes me as a big setup threat to any build that I could possibly bring. So at least, I guess I shouldn't say that. Calm Mind Mesprit is a pretty decent threat to my team as well, and it is something I do consider to be one of the bigger threats. It's just not something that's as hard to deal with as something like a Thunderous T or as something like a Garchomp, as both of those do have the attack power to be able to plow through my team with a single boost, unlike Mesprit, which does require several to be a massive threat to my team. So Thunderous T, huge threat, especially considering it can run a Z move and Oko my Clefable with an Acid Downpour. Definitely something to keep in mind in playing my game. Garchomp is a big threat just because of the fact that it can run Tectonic Rage with Z Earthquake or even Z Outrage if he wants to, but the Z Earthquake does allow him to deal very well with my Clefable. It's still pretty hard walled by Mega Slowbro, which makes me think there's a chance he might bring more of a special Garchomp even. Also something to keep in mind just to see what he is, but I do think SD is the most likely set because the Thundurus will more likely be his special sweeper in this game, so I think that'll be his combination of breakers on his team, and as long as I play around that effectively, I should be okay. The Mesprit is a little bit scary because my team is relatively weak to Bolt Beam coverage with Ice Beam and Thunderbolt, so he could easily run something like Calm Mind with Bolt Beam, and that could generally be a pretty big threat to my team, especially because it does outspeed about half of my mons, a little over half of my mons, leaving me with only the Thundy Eye, the Talonflame, and the Drapion and Diglett. So yeah, definitely over half of my mons. Only with those 4 mons able to still outspeed. Obviously, Diglett can't do much to Mesprit, so that could definitely be an issue if he's more of like a max HP, max speed, roughly set with his Mesprit with Calm Mind. So another set to keep in mind, but really those are the 3 main things I need to keep in check. The Mega Scizor doesn't have the best matchup, despite the fact that I do still think he will bring it because this dual stab is good against Clefable Mega Bro, but as long as it doesn't get up any free Swords Dances, then I should be in pretty good shape there. Especially considering I can run things like the Talonflame and the Thundurus and be able to check him very well offensively in that regard, as well as still not being able to be OHKO'd by Mega Scizor with either Clef or Mega Bro. So the only way he can OHKO my Clefable, I believe, is if he is Adamant Iron Head, which is a little bit less likely, as generally you would only run Iron Head if you were also running something like Agility, and I really do think he's going to want the priority from Bullet Punch to help deal with Diggersby as well, so it'll be interesting to see what he brings on that. But defensively, he doesn't have the best responses to my team at all. He can lean on something like Toxapex to deal with maybe Clefable, but I can easily run Life Orb Psychic and do a ton to that, which is exactly what I'm doing, and I'll show that here pretty soon whenever I show the actual team. He could also run something like Gourgeist to help deal with both my Thundurus and my Diggersby. Diggersby does get super effective coverage in 2 forms for Gourgeist, really in 3 forms, coming from Ice Punch, Knockoff, and Fire Punch. Obviously bringing Fire Punch for the Mega Scizor this week, so the Gourgeist is not the biggest, the best way to check Diggersby, honestly. Sure, it's a check if it's a full health, but it's really hard for him to safely get in the Gourgeist without taking a bunch of damage in this particular game, so that's a thing. Also defensively, the Donphan could be more specially defensive or even just Assault Vest to help deal with the Thundurus. Again, I can wear that down because he doesn't have any form of external recovery for the Donphan outside of Healing Wish on Mesprit. So overall, the matchup is pretty solid for sure. Paul, though, is very good in the format. He's very, very good, and it's not going to be easy. Even with a good matchup, it's not going to be easy. I have to play well. I think my prep is pretty good. Let's just go ahead and take a look at what I have here. So first up is the Clefable. This is a Life Orb set mod, as like I already said before, with max HP and 156 special attack, 68 special defense, and the defense and speed is just there to catch creeps and to throw off the calcs a little bit. So the 68 special defense CVs allows me to guaranteed survive a modest Life Orb Sludge Wave from a Thundurus T. So what that does is that makes sure that an Agility Thundurus T is not able to just straight sweep me if he's able to get up in Agility at any point, as long as my Clefable is at full health, or as long as my Diggersby is alive, which I'll show here pretty soon. But this just gives me an extra check to it, and Life Orb Moonblast does do a ton to Thundurus T, even if he's max HP, it does enough to where it becomes in range of my Diggersby's quick attack. So that combination will always keep the Thundurus in check. So as long as the Thundurus is alive and healthy and in any way a setup threat, I need to make sure those two are still around just to make sure it's not able to get out of hand. But I do have a lot of ways to offensively check the Thundurus as well, as long as it doesn't get up in agility. So that's really the key point for me in dealing with Thundurus, is make sure it doesn't get up in agility at any point. And as long as that's the case, or as long as he's weakened into range of Diggersby's quick attack or into range of other priority on my team, I should be good to go. So overall, this coverage super solid against him. The special attack investment allows me to 2-hit KO a max HP Toxapex with Psychic, which could be nice, as I do somewhat anticipate him maybe trying to bring a Haze Toxapex to help deal with a Calm Mind or Cosmic Power Clefable. Seems like something he really needs to do, because Cosmic Clef really does body his team. So I do think that's something he needs to prep for extensively if he wants to have a chance to beat that type of set. So this does counter that type of prep on his end, and that Toxapex will not be able to deal with me very well whatsoever. The Flamethrower, of course, good for the Mega Scizor as well as the Gourgeist, but Moonblast is just really good spammable coverage against his team. So really solid mon against him overall, and hopefully I'll be able to maybe catch a Speed Creep or two with with these 12 EVs and speed, as there's the chance he might try to creep this with Donphan. So this would allow me to get a little bit of damage off on Donphan before maybe he drops a Gunshot or Earthquake on me. So we'll see how that goes. Pretty good mon overall against this team. Next up is a Mega Slowbro. Again, recovery 3 attacks on this because there's no real point in setting up whenever he has a Thunderous T, which blows me back no matter what. So we're just going to bring the 3 offensive moves on this, despite the fact that I don't have any offensive investment. Mega Slowbro has that very high special attack stat, which will allow me to do a ton of damage to any of his switch-ins, with Flamethrower and Ice Beam being able to super effectively hit all of his most likely switch-ins, and Psychic, of course, being powerful stab on this, which will help with a lot of his potential switch-ins as well. So again, very solid mon against him, and the cool thing is this thing cannot be O-code. I don't think this can be O-code. This cannot be O-code by +2 Mega Scizor U-turn. I'm pretty sure that is correct. I don't think it's O-code by +2 Mega Scizor's U-turn at full health. So this thing is Lefat, and hopefully it lives up to that name. So you know, I don't want it to lose weight. Actually, I think it's at a perfect weight as is. So that's the Mega Slowbro. Next up is the Decidueye. This is more or less a just a hazard remover in this matchup. It also is a nice pivot around a lot of his team. It's able to take any +2 hit from the Thunderous T, as long as he's not a Z move, of course, and as long as he's not HP flying. So that could definitely come in handy, but in general it's just really nice against this team as a utility mon, getting momentum, and he doesn't have any resistances to Shadow Ball outside of Lightbird, which I can U-turn on for super effective damage, and I obviously have the Clefable, which switches in very easily to Lightbird unless he's like Light Orb, Iron Tail. So again, very solid against this team. The Colbur Berry helps out for the Thunderous T, potentially having Dark Pulse or Knockoff. It also helps out with the Scizor, allowing me to pretty much for free U-turn on the Scizor to make sure that I get a slow U-turn off on it and maintain momentum on whatever he wants to go for, just in case he U-turns himself or maybe tries to over-predict and click SD. So that's the thought with that. Next up is the Diggersby. This is a Life Orb for attack sets. Very, very good against this team. It outpaces a lot of it, and he has to invest heavily in things like Mesprit if he wants to outpace my Diggersby with the Mesprit. So that pretty much helps a lot with the Mesprit, as if it were more of a defensive set, then it could otherwise be a little bit of an issue, but this certainly helps with that a lot. So quick attack for obvious priority to help with the Thunderous T and the Garchomp. Knockoff plus Fire Punch helps with the Mega Scizor plus Gourgeist core, as I really do think one of those two are going to be his primary response to this, and obviously those two moves are going to deal quite well with those Pokemon. So Earthquake as the final coverage move, as it does hit his entire team. Didn't really see a reason, not quite the entire team, but most of the team, didn't really see a reason to run Return in this matchup, as with his most likely switch in being the Gourgeist anyways, it doesn't really benefit me to have Return. Plus, I just felt like Earthquake was a better stab option here when I felt like I needed Quick Attack, Knockoff, and Fire Punch to effectively deal with the switch-ins. So no Return this week, which just makes my job a lot easier, because I don't have to raise Diggersby's happiness before the battle, as that's a nuisance to say the least. So that's the Diggersby set. Jolly, don't quite remember exactly what I'm outpacing, but I'm outpacing everything I can possibly outpace with the Jolly Diggersby, so that's what's important here. And yeah, pretty good mon against this team. Now next up is probably the most creative, I don't know about creative, but the most unique EV spread of the week, and that is the Thunderous T. Leftovers, Nasty Plot, Thunderbolt, HP Ice, and Grass Knot. So this does hit his entire team very hard. Thunderbolt, HP Ice, his team is super weak to Bolt Beam. The only thing I believe resisting both of those, not resisting, but the only things that aren't going to be hit super effectively by those, doing this entirely off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure it's only the Mesprit, the Liepard, and the Mega Scizor. Obviously, the Mega Scizor and the Liepard aren't going to enjoy these attacks very much at all, and honestly, Mesprit's not really going to either, especially if it is not specially defensive, but Donphan also switches in decently well, and with Donphan being most likely his switch into this monster, then Grass Knot was a pretty essential last coverage move there. As Donphan is very heavy, it does a lot more than HP Ice does to Donphan, so overall solid offensive coverage against this team. Now let's take a look at the EV spread here, as this is weird. So I am 4 HP, 240 defense, 44 special attack, and 220 speed. So what the heck am I doing here? So this EV spread allows me to survive this combination of attacks. So for example, if Stealth Rock's around the field and I want to switch my Thunderous hard into a Mega Scizor, I'm going to take 25% from Stealth Rocks, and worst case scenario, he goes for Adamant Max Attack Knockoff. Adamant Max Attack Knockoff plus Adamant Max Attack Bullet Punch is not able to 2-hit KO this set after Stealth Rocks. That was the general idea. I wanted to make sure I had that extra response to Mega Scizor, just to make sure I can keep it weakened, just to make sure that in case it gets up a boost at any point in the match, that I'll be able to deal with it effectively. In addition to that, this spread does allow me to survive any hit from Scarf Garchomp, just in case that's what he is. With Stealth Rocks up, that may not necessarily be the case, but I know this does live as Scarf Outrage without Stealth Rocks up, so that's pretty nice for sure. But overall, just a generally bulky setup sweeper that I think can give him a lot of trouble in this game, and I really didn't think I needed that extra special attack investment because I'm able to get the KOs that I need to and be a, quite honestly, defensive annoyance for his team at the same time. So pretty cool set against him. And then finally I have the Talonflame. This is a Flying EMZ Gale Wings Talonflame. Yep, I'm bringing Gale Wings for once. What a surprise, right? So Brave Bird, Flare Blitz, Roost, and Swords Dance. His entire team is hit super hard by these coverage moves, and with the Flying EMZ boosted Supersonic Sky Strike, especially a +2, he has 0 switch-ins, so that's pretty much spelling death for something on his team. This allows me to do a ton of damage to a Garchomp if he tries to check me with that, as most Garchomps will take around 70 to 80% from that, or at least between 60 and 80% depending on his bulk investment. So definitely solid against that. That'll help put the Garchomp in range of Diggersby, which is essentially the game plan with both of his fast setup sweepers, being the Thundy T and the Garchomp, is to put them in range of my Diggersby's quick attack, making Diggersby really important in this game. So I need to make sure Diggersby stays alive if those two threats are still alive as well. But this does outpace his entire team, bar Scarfers, and quite honestly, it just destroys him. So one little thing to keep in mind on this, there is actually a chance that he brings Hidden Power Rock on the Mega Scizor. It's kind of a weird tech to somewhat expect, but just thinking about the matchup a little bit, it actually makes a lot of sense to bring Hidden Power Rock on the Mega Scizor, because I do have the Thundy T and the Thundy I and the Talonflame, which are my most likely switch-ins to a Scizor. So Hidden Power Rock is not out of the question. That is something I do actually want to scout for before switching my Talonflame hard into that kind of threat. I'll probably be more likely to go hard into my Thundurus instead of into my Talonflame, as my Thundurus is naturally going to be able to take the Hidden Power Rock a lot better, and it also preserves the Gale Wings on my Talonflame. So just one thing to keep in mind here for the battle. But that about wraps this up for the team builder. I'm actually going to be splitting this into 2 videos once again, so you can expect to see the actual battle versus Polymac going up tomorrow, probably roughly at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. Just kind of depends on when I can get my graphics done. The battle's actually only happening today, it being the Sunday, so the day before the battle, or the day before the upload. So I'm not sure if we'll be able to get it all ready by that time, but if it's not up by 3 p.m. CST, then you can expect it to be up a little bit later in that day. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you all tomorrow. Peace.